It's one of the biggest moves to fight revenge porn. Today, President Trump signed the Take It Down bill. The new law officially makes it a crime to share non-consensual intimate images online.
This legislation is a powerful step forward in our efforts to ensure that every American, especially young people, can feel better protected from their image or identity being abused through non-consensual or intimate imagery of I and CII.
With the rise of AI image generation, countless women have been harassed with deepfakes and other explicit images distributed against their will. This is the wrong, and it's just so horribly wrong. And it's a very abusive situation, like in some cases people have never seen before. And today we're making it totally illegal.
Our morning news team spoke with a victim of AI-generated deepfakes. She shared her heartbreaking story and talked about why this law is so important for so many victims.
This whole situation is really isolating. They put these vulnerable images of you out, and it's truly just an awful experience, especially if you are alone in this. But there's so many victims around the world that have nobody, so it's such an isolating experience, and especially takes a complete toll on the mental health aspect, especially because social media is so popular and so important. Everything is put on social media, and once it's on social media and once you take something, it can't be undone. So it's really hard, especially for vulnerable teens all around the world that don't have community or don't have the ability to have conversation. It's truly an awful experience. So that's why it's so important for this Take It Down bill to be implemented, because it really just gives some protection to others.
The Take It Down law will now criminalize the publication of non-consensual intimate imagery, or NCII. This includes AI-generated NCII, better known as deepfake revenge porn. It will also require social media and similar websites to remove such content within 48 hours of notice from a victim. After the Take It Down Act passed in the House, several lawmakers, including the bill's co-authors, shared their thoughts on what this means for victims. Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who co-sponsored the bill, said, quote, "This victory belongs first and foremost to the heroic survivors who shared their stories and the advocates who never gave up. By requiring social media companies to take down this abusive content quickly, we're sparing victims from repeated trauma and holding predators accountable." Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, another co-sponsor, said, quote, "These images can ruin lives and reputations, but now that our bipartisan legislation is becoming law, victims will be able to have this material removed from social media platforms, and law enforcement can hold perpetrators accountable." Joining us now is one of the supporters of the bill, Congressman Khanna. Congressman, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the Take It Down law. Why did you decide to support it?
Well, I represent Silicon Valley. I've seen the harm that AI-generated sexually explicit images can do. I mean, you have young kids, sometimes in junior high and high school, and they have their peers using AI to generate sexually explicit images about them. And sometimes it's not even their peers, sometimes it's a stranger, and then they're putting it on social media. It can totally destroy someone's life. And I participated in a roundtable with First Lady Melania Trump. We heard the courageous testimony of some of these young women who faced that. And frankly, I appreciate First Lady Trump's leadership on this. I appreciate Senator Cruz. It was really a bipartisan effort, and I'm glad we got it done.
You know, speaking of that bipartisan effort, this law received overwhelming bipartisan support in Congress, which is, as we know, a rarity nowadays. Everything is so divisive. Do you see more bipartisan work in the future, perhaps with the upcoming One Big Beautiful Bill?
Well, look, I oppose a lot of the things in that bill in terms of Medicaid cuts, but I had introduced a bill that is bipartisan. It basically codifies President Trump's executive order going after big pharma. I mean, President Trump's executive order is very simple. It says Americans should not pay more for our prescription drugs than people in every other part of the world. And Americans should get the lowest price. Representative Luna, a Republican, Representative Biggs, a Republican, myself, and Marcy Kaptur have said, let's codify President Trump's executive order into law. This way, Big Pharma can't challenge it into the courts. I hope that gets an overwhelming vote and a bipartisan victory.
You know, it's interesting because so many of these executive orders are being challenged in the court. And people expected perhaps, or perhaps legal experts expected, more laws to be coming out of it. So it's good that you're following up on that executive order with an actual law. Going back to the big, beautiful bill for a moment, will you support that one? Will you vote for that one?
I cannot. And the major problem I have is the same problem that Senator Hawley has, and that is the Medicaid cuts. Senator Hawley wrote a great op-ed in the New York Times, and he said, look, this is a House bill has $715 billion of cuts to Medicaid, and that's going to mean rural hospitals closing. That's going to mean seniors who are in assisted living get suffering. If they took those Medicaid cuts out, it would be a much, much better bill.
You know, speaking of bipartisanship, Congressman, you seem to have ideas that are attractive to both sides of the aisle. One reported fan of yours is Steve Bannon, who's a longtime Trump loyalist and political strategist, right? He's allegedly called you a rock star and a decent guy. So looking forward for your Democratic Party, it seems like that kind of open-minded crossover that you seem to be able to do would be beneficial for your fellow Democrats. Do you think that they can do it? Other fellow Democrats can do it?
Well, ultimately, we're all on the same team, right? We're Americans. I was in Allentown, and there were some very polite protesters on my town hall that were waving Trump paraphernalia, Trump hats, American flag shirts. And a couple of them had seen me on Fox News. And two of the women came up to me and said, can we get a selfie and a picture? And I said, sure. And we started talking, and I invited them into my town hall. And there were a few places where they applauded. There were places they disagreed. But ultimately, we have to treat people with respect. We have to understand that you don't become president of the United States twice if you don't have a lot of people voting for you. And my view is, if you go and if you give your viewpoint, and if you treat people with respect, and if you say we're on all on the same team, you have a better chance of persuading folks than if you just are judgmental and aren't listening.
Well, it seems like you found the recipe for that secret sauce moving forward. Do you think that you're going to be able to get more, or we will see more Democrats following that path?
I hope so, because, look, do we just want this country to continue to spiral in a more polarized direction and greater division? That would be so terrible for the country. It'll allow China to win. There are areas where our parties can come together on building a manufacturing base, on making sure America is a technology leader, on redeveloping hollowed out, deindustrialized towns. I had a bill with Secretary of State Rubio to do that, to create a White House Economic Development Council to do that. There are areas we're going to disagree. We're going to disagree on abortion rights. We're going to disagree on issues of certain things on voting rights. And we should have honest conversations where we disagree, but that shouldn't prevent us from building a vision for the economic redevelopment of this country and the economic leadership of this country. I call it economic patriotism, and I believe that's something that can bring this country together.
I want to take a moment and ask you about Joe Biden. You were a presidential surrogate for President Biden during the 2024 election. You went around declaring that he was up to the task. But now you have said that Biden shouldn't have run for re-election. You said that at the time you didn't have the full picture on his health and his mental acuity. And you've said that your party should take accountability for the way that that was handled. Now, just these last few days, we have the news of this cancer diagnosis being revealed. And now people are even more upset with Democrats, believing that this is even adding more to the cover-up. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first, I'm sure every American's first thought is just to wish the president good health, recovery, and hope that he and Joe Biden deal with this. I mean, just on a human level, it's a very, very difficult thing to have advanced stage prostate cancer. I'm glad that there are now possible treatment options that allow people to live healthy, productive lives. And I hope he will succeed at that. But it's obvious to me that he should not have run for re-election. Based on the few conversations I would have with him, he seemed at the time perfectly engaged, but I didn't have, of course, a daily interaction with him. And I relied on his assessment that he could run. That was wrong, and we need to admit that was wrong, and that he should not have run. We should have had a different nominee.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you so much for your time tonight. Would love to have you back again to discuss your progress here. Thank you.